So today I want to announce something very important. I'm starting a second YouTube channel. I've decided that one YouTube channel it doesn't make sense anymore for me because, I've got the Linux related YouTube channel, DistroTube, and I've made about 1,500 videos now. In the last 6.5 years, I've made 1,500 videos about Linux and free and open source software, and it's great. I love Linux. I love a lot of the software that I talk about. I've made so many videos about command line utilities and Vim and Emacs, and I love all those topics, window managers, love all the tiling window manager stuff, and it's interesting. I'm passionate about that stuff, but there's so many other things in life I'm passionate about, right? So it's one of those things. We all have different interests, different hobbies. Nobody is interested in just one subject. And I really started thinking about this, seriously thinking about this about 4 years ago. So this has been a long time coming because about 4 years ago, my channel is about 6.5 years old. So really after about 2 years, I'd probably made 500 videos about Linux, free and open source software at that point in the first 2 years of the channel, because I was even more active in the early days of the channel than I am now. So I made a lot of videos at that point, and even then I was like, you know what? I'm tired of talking about Linux, or I don't want to just talk about Linux. Like, I want to break the monotony. I want to keep things interesting. I want to keep things fun. And, I had seriously made the determination, going into the third year of the channel, this is the year I'm going to start at least one other YouTube channel. And I never did it because, starting a new channel, that's going to be some work. So I never did it. And then, after 3 years of doing DistroTube, right, going into the fourth year, I was like, this is the year I'm going to start a second channel. And that never happened. And then finally, 6 years into it, I finally decided, you know what? It's time, right? It's time because, again, I want to break that monotony. I want to keep things interesting, keep things fun, because I want to be able to do this for the long term. You don't want to get burnt out. And part of getting burnt out is not necessarily the workload. Part of being burnt out is when things are just not fun anymore. And I think it makes sense to have multiple channels because everyone has multiple interests in life, even multiple interests that they are passionate about. I mean, everybody knows a little about everything, but most people, have real passion and deep knowledge, at least in a few areas, a handful of areas in life. It's not like Linux is the thing that I know the most about in life. And, oddly enough, I made 1,500 videos about Linux and free and open source software. And I've certainly spent most of my adult life, playing with computers and tech, and especially Linux and free and open source software. I've dedicated a large portion of my adult life to that. But honestly, as a kid growing up, I mean, if we're talking about subjects that you could consider me an expert in, I didn't go to school for computers or anything tech related, right? My school training, my university training is actually in music. I've spent pretty much my entire life from the time I was in 5th grade till now, as a musician. So I've actually got college degrees in music. I've got a bachelor's degree in music, a master's degree in music, worked on a PhD in music, although I never finished it because professionally I decided I wasn't going to pursue a profession in music. But that's something that I'm very passionate about. And there's a handful of topics in life that I'm very passionate about. So I always kind of resented when I started my Linux YouTube channel that I just had the one YouTube channel and the one topic to discuss, right? Because, I wanted to do other things, but it didn't make sense to do multiple channels when you're new to YouTube, because honestly, when you're new to YouTube, you need to just focus on that one channel, that one thing, because it takes so long to actually learn how to do YouTube right. There's a learning curve, right? There's actually a steep learning curve, and you do have to put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of discipline, and you probably have to make a few hundred videos on YouTube before you really kind of know how the game is played. So, now that I kind of know how the YouTube game is played right now it kind of makes sense to branch out a little bit. I think also this is the right time because I'm in a better place mentally, as far as, especially most people on YouTube, especially when you're first getting into YouTube, kind of new to YouTube, you're so concerned about the analytics, the viewers, the subscribers, you get wrapped up into all of that, where these days, hell, I haven't even looked at my analytics for YouTube probably in months. I have no idea, what any of the analytics are. It's because these days I'm just not as interested in that stuff. To me, these days, it's more about, am I enjoying what I'm doing? And that's kind of where I'm at now. So I've created this second YouTube channel. This new YouTube channel is going to be called DT Options. Now, what this channel will be about will be primarily focused on option trading. It's going to be primarily a financial and investing channel. So I've been a trader for many years, who knows when I started. I actually remember buying my first shares of stock, like when I was a teenager, right? But I wasn't an active trader back then, but I'd say I've been really actively involved in trading for more than a decade. But I first discovered options about 8 years ago, and I became really passionate about options trading because options really kind of changed the way I thought about trading and really about life in general, because options are so different than other financial instruments because unlike trading stocks or forex or cryptocurrencies or futures, options are really interesting because of their flexibility. It's a really neat kind of trading instrument, options are, because for one thing, they let you define your risk. If you want to put on an options trade that has a 90% chance of winning, you can do that. If you want to put on an options trade that has a 10% chance of winning, you can do that. And obviously, the more risk you take, the more reward that you could make. Obviously, the less risk you take, the less reward. So you can kind of pick exactly your comfort level when it comes to risk reward as something very different. For example, if you're used to something like trading stocks or trading futures, which are essentially coin flips, right? It's a 50-50 bet, right? You flip a coin, it's either heads or tails, right? It's either going up or going down. Options are something quite different. Options are also amazing in terms of their flexibility as far as strategies that you could use, because there's literally hundreds of option strategies out there that you could choose to employ. And another advantage of options compared to trading things like stocks, for example, is options are leveraged. They actually are very capital efficient, much more capital efficient than just trading stocks. So I've been seriously trading options as far as in a very active way here in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years, where, I typically make thousands of options trades every year. I would say here in the last 3 years or so, I average about 2,500 options trades every year, right? I put on a lot of options trades, and it's one of those things. Again, it's such a passion of mine nowadays. I can't imagine not trading. And a few years ago, I would say a couple of years ago, I really, one of my other passions that I had, well, it's a new passion, is I wanted to get into writing books, because so many people write books these days. Everybody now writes books, especially now that self-publishing is a thing. And I had so many ideas of topics that, I really love. I had like 3 or 4 different book ideas, and I started kind of writing these books. I started, outlining a lot of different things, but ultimately, I would say about a year ago, I decided, hey, it's my very first book, and I'm doing it wrong. Let me focus on one book and really focus on writing one book. So I decided to write a book about options trading, and specifically my style of options trading, the strategy that I typically employ when I trade options. So I just recently finished, and it's currently published over on Amazon, the Super Wheel Option Strategy: How to Achieve Financial Freedom Trading Options. So you'll find a link in the description for those that want to check out my book. And I may actually do some videos here on the DistroTube channel about the whole book writing process, because that was a journey in itself, especially as someone that knew nothing about it. It's kind of like when I started my YouTube channel, I knew nothing about audio and video, and it's such a steep learning curve. Writing a book, there's a serious learning curve with that as well. Now, some of you may wonder, is there any kind of connection between starting a channel about trading, a channel about finance? Is there a connection between that and a channel about free and open source software? I mean, what's the deal, DT? Well, I think there is. I actually think it makes sense why I'm passionate about free and open source software, and why I'm passionate about financial freedom, right? I think, yeah, I've stated this many times that I'm all about all things freedom, right? And, unlike a lot of other freedoms that are granted to us by the government, or for those of you that are religious, you think certain freedoms are granted to you by God, right? But, financial freedom is a totally different kind of freedom because it's not given to you by anybody. It's not something that is granted. It's something that you actually have to earn. With financial freedom, you have to work for it. You have to earn it. You have to go out there and achieve it. And it's one of the saddest things about the world is that most people are not financially free. They're not financially independent. Most people, when I say they're not financially independent, they actually require the assistance of somebody else just to get by, whether it be their parents or their spouse, or if you're older, maybe you depend on your children for financial help, or many people depend on government assistance for financial help. And there's no reason why everyone can't be financially free, because achieving that financial freedom, that financial independence I'm talking about, it isn't difficult, right? This isn't, well, I won't say it's easy, but you don't have to be a genius to do it. It requires some work. You have to work at it a little bit. But it's something that I believe pretty much anybody can do. Part of the problem with why so many people aren't financially free, financially independent, is just a lack of education. There's just not a lot of education being given to the general public, and especially to the kids, right? Kids in school, they don't learn about finance, trading, investing. That's typically not subjects that are really covered. It's certainly not in depth in school. And unfortunately, I think that's part of the problem with today's educational system. And one of the things that, I've always been a teacher as far as earlier in life. I taught music, obviously. When I mentioned I had music degrees, I've been a music teacher, obviously. I've made 1,500 videos teaching people about the GNU/Linux operating system and learning the command line, learning text editors like Vim and Emacs. And I've made all of these educational kind of videos. I've been a teacher, right? And I'm good at it. And this is what I want to focus on now, is educating the public about trading and investing. And again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to make this work. All you need is a little time. You need a little time. You got to dedicate a little time to studying, and you got to be a disciplined person. If you're not a disciplined person, then you can't make this work. You have to be disciplined, not just in your trading, but also in life. You have to go to work. You have to make a little money. You have to be able to save a little money so that you can actually find a proper size trading account. And then when you start trading, you have to be a disciplined person. That's really all it is learning to be disciplined. And if you can do that, you can achieve that financial freedom that so many of us desire. So for those that want to follow along with me on my new YouTube journey, check out my new channel, DT Options. Peace, guys.